Hey, everybody, welcome to the Aligned Love Podcast. This is the place where I am going to help you find the one thing that you feel is missing: healthy love. I am your host, Lauren Zoller, and in this podcast, I will share with you how to attract love, live in alignment, and elevate your deepest relationships. So buckle up, get present, tune into your body, and open up to the possibility that you truly do get to have it all. Let's dive in. Quentin, welcome to the show. So happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So I was just reading your bio before you and I hopped on together, and it is insane to me how many things you have done. You are a breathwork facilitator. You facilitate somatics. You're in the space of helping people really break free from mental prisons so they can have deeper relationships. It's wild, all of the things that you do in the relationship space. And I'm so excited because we're going to dive into attachment theory today and looking at attachment styles. But before we do that, I would love to know, how did you get into this space of really helping people in their relationships and having deeper intimacy?
Yeah, so thank you. It's a great question, and thank you for this opening. So I guess that I went into this space because of my own healing journey, and there were like way too many things that have happened in my own past and in my childhood, and relationship was always the hardest area for me to evolve in. So in order to understand why I'm doing this, it's like I will need to talk a bit about my childhood. When I was a child, I was always had all these questions very early, like is that void inside of me, or why so much anger, or why people are doing what they do, or why my parents are so in conflict all the time. So all these questions that when I will ask people, it would be constant repression or suppression, like, oh, we don't ask this, or they don't have the answer because they are not at this level of consciousness or awareness. So my mother was suffering a lot from depression when I was very young. My father had a lot of anger and anxiety issue. I was bullied at school, and so I felt always that I didn't fit in. It took a lot of time to find this path. I went into a lot of chaos and despair. Like, it's the external environment that I was in when I was raised was not safe. Then my internal home or emotional home was not safe. So it was not safe to be me. And so when you are in this, like, you are constantly on edge, and you are wondering, why do I even exist, and stuff like that. So based on that, I went into quite first a journey of external compensation instead of internal evolution. So as we know, like going into any form of addiction to numb the pain, to numb the void that we can all feel within, until I reached a point when it was like, I'm really going to die physically, or I need to evolve into someone that not only has to survive, but live. And so there were a few turning points, but because my ego was so strong, and this is why I was passionate about understanding all of the prison of the mind and the wounded ego, because like this is for me the baseline of why people can be so trapped in constraint and construct that they had no choice but to create in order to survive, of course. But the ego, it's interesting with the ego because like oftentimes people think the ego is the enemy, or we think that the ego is just doing things to protect you. And it's not one or the other. The ego is just on repeat, just going to repeat what we have absorbed the most, as we know. So how can the process that I use in this is not so much of reprogramming, it's more a process of dissolving and deprogramming. The byproduct of that is going to be the most authentic selves of someone that's going to rise through the dissolution of what they think they were that they are not. That answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, it definitely did. And what I love so much about what you said at the beginning was that and I often say this, that I didn't choose the path of healing through relationship. It really chose you in a lot of ways. And it sounds like you got to a point where you were so uncomfortable in your life that you were willing to look at those parts of yourself that
Absolutely.
most people are really scared to look at.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know when you were going through that entire journey, because it's, it's funny. I know we're going to talk about attachment styles in just a bit,
Yeah.
but I think so many people, they read the book Attached, they start to see the attachment labels per se as something that they can kind of hold on to and hook into.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is, hey, can you use this as information to try to dive deeper into what your ego is trying to keep you in? So I'm curious, how did all of that unfold for you? The path of walking through understanding the attachment styles when you were doing such deep ego work. How did those two things come together?
Yeah, so that's very interesting because I learned attachment style after doing all of this ego work and diving deep. So like I love what you mentioned because the wounded ego will use any kind of information to create an identity and then use that as remaining the victim of their own construct. So you will see oftentimes people saying, oh yeah, but I'm doing that because I'm anxious, or I'm doing that because I'm avoidant. And so it's supposed to be a tool. And as we know, like the attachments are just the tip of the iceberg. Like underneath, there is trauma, there is prison, there is emotional negative attachment, shadow needs, all of that. And so oftentimes we will have two people that now we start to see a lot of people knowing about attachment style, but they stay stuck because again, that become an identity. And everything that become an identity is going to try to survive. And so instead of helping each other dissolving our own attachment style, the ego is going to use each attachment style to reinforce their construct. So I actually, learn about the wounded ego and all of that before anything else. Actually, that's not true. I learned about NLP and stuff like that. But when I was doing all of that, there was always something in me that was saying, oh, I'm not at the bottom of this. Like I did NLP, I did inner child work, breath work, and all that. And even at the end, I was like, no, there's something missing here. There's a big part missing. And I don't know what that is, but I want to figure that out. And then it was all the realm of the subconscious. And so we're probably going to talk a bit more in detail around attachment style. But yeah, that relate to what you were saying, like the book, what I've discovered around the wounded ego is like the more you're going to learn something at the behavior level, and attachment style are into that realm, it's still behavior. The more you learn details around your attachment style, the more it can actually reinforce the root of your constraint. Because we have plethora of people knowing so much detail about attachment style, and oftentimes they're like, I don't know why I have so much awareness, but I'm still stuck because there is different level of awareness. Yeah. And the job that I really want to do is to link the old patterns for someone together. And for people that listen, sometimes we see a lot of, oh, you have the pattern of the people pleaser, or you have the pattern of the fixer or the overgiver, but that's still conscious. A real pattern is like there's an outcome in life that you want to change. Then there's behavior, habits. Then you have emotion and feelings, and thoughts, then belief, then prison, emotional negative attachment, shadow needs, and then you have the root cause. So when you link all of that to someone, then it can start to dissolve because it's like the game Tetris. Like it's like a little cube that we align, and then once we see the whole thing, we cannot not see it anymore. So now we have a real choice. Because before, like, and like we probably have seen this quote that says, stop doing that, start doing this. And like, people cannot do that because it's still unconscious.
Right.
So I cannot say to someone, you have to stop doing the thing that you do. Like you are running unconsciously. You don't even know why you're doing this. So you cannot stop something that you don't even know why it's there in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really linking everything, because before we are in the illusion of choice, like we think that we choose our partner. We don't really choose. Our wounded ego is going to choose for us so we can reveal all the constraints so we can work on it. And that's probably going to be the difference between an unhealthy and a healthy relationship. The healthy relationship is not that they are all sorted. I'm not sorted. I still have things to work on. But like when you find someone that is like, you know what, I'm going to help you with that, and you're going to help me with that as well. That's where we move into the realm of healthy relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's so many things, there's so many questions and so many ways that we could go with this. And you know what, we might not even talk about attachment styles because I feel like the people that listen to my podcast, they know the attachment styles.
Yep.
Most women, and what I really love that you pointed to was that, because what I preach in the somatic realm is that the nervous system runs the show.
Yep.
And the nervous system really does run the unconscious. It's the part of us that had to go into survival or was able to get into safety when there was something that was in threat, when it came to some sort of relational rupture in our life. So I'm curious to know, I want to talk more about this subconscious piece. And
Yep.
for the people that are listening, if you don't know about the attachment styles, just go Google it. You're going to be able to find all kinds of stuff. Or I've done many podcasts all about attachment styles and breaking them down.
Yeah.
But I think that what would be really powerful for you and I to talk about is diving into this subconscious part of who we are and how we start to get to that deeper level. What questions should we ask? Where do we even begin in that journey? For me, somatic work led me to very deep healing of the subconscious. And I'm kind of curious to know your path, but where do you feel like people should start if they're saying, okay, I understand my attachment style. I've done a lot of cognitive therapy. I understand my ego. I understand what it means like to be in this sense of self. How do I start to tap into this deeper level of healing of the subconscious?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful question. Thank you for asking. So, the nervous system and the subconscious, they kind of work in pairs. So one affects the other. And so if we look at the subconscious, and for people that listen, I think it's important that I explain how these prisons that affect the subconscious are going to be created. So we are going to, when we are a child and we learn language or any language, we are going to relate to the world through the words that we use. The words that we use cast a vibration. The first sound in space was the words is going to extend to a language create a code, and a code create a program. It's a bit like the movie Matrix, like we see all the code. Programs are now infused in the subconscious and the nervous system. When I tell for people that listen to me saying subconscious, ego, survival mind, wounded inner child, kind of the same thing. So then the subconscious live in the concept of time, psychological time. So past, present, and future. That's the line we have attributed to time, which became a timeline. So this is a psychological container we have to experience the world through. So in the past, we are going to experience a certain number of emotion: sadness, grief, guilt, resentment, shame, regret. So it's all around feeling of worthlessness and inadequacy. The present, it's all be around scarcity. So I want something I don't have, or I have something I don't want, which is generally in the world of disease. The first one is the world of material or relationship. I want a relationship that I don't have, so I think I'm missing something. Then I'm going to attract something that's going to enhance my sense of void because I don't feel complete with myself. And again, for people that listen, you don't have to feel completely complete with yourself. You do have to reach a certain point when you are okay with yourself. Otherwise, a relationship is only going to enhance what's already there inside of you. I have something I don't want, generally it's disease, so cancer, tumor, like any illnesses that we can have. So the wounded ego is not just the part that we think is egoistical. The ego is everywhere. It's like the main driver until we become conscious. So if we go into a bit of spirituality, the ego is a part of the soul that detaches itself to create our human individuality or identity. Then through the language that we learn, this program or prison that I talk about, they are going to be infused in the ego. So the programming then are going to inform our thoughts, the form inform our feelings generate emotion and dictate our behavior. So everything that we do from a place of unconsciousness is a reaction: perfectionism, sabotaging, all of that. And so all of this is going to be compensation from deeper constructs. And so then behavior going to produce a result, and result produce an experience of life. So if I take, for example, the realm, let's say, of judgment, which probably 99% of the population are under the spell of, we all judge ourselves, we all judge people. And it's very interesting when I enter any space with experts that say, this is a space of non-judgment. When I hear that, I'm like, no, that's not true. We constantly judge. Like, judgment is not only negative, can be positive. but we all judge. So when someone is like, it's a space of non-judgment, I'm like, no, I'm already judging you. You are already judging the fact that your space is non-judgment. So it's already a judgment anyway. So
Right.
I'm like, I would rather opening something like, I'm already judging all of you. And then I'm going to talk to you to see if my judgment is right or wrong, because I want to get to know you. That's more authentic to me. So if we take the example of the realm of judgment, judgment in the body is going to generate a massive amount of friction.
Mm.
Friction is going to generate pressure and heat in the nervous system. Heat creates acid, and an acidic body, as we know, creates disease. So then all of this pressure is going to seek to be released through aggression or passive aggression or even depression. Depression is the body trying to depressurize the pressure we have within. So this is kind of the ego is really, if I have to give a very easy example, you know, the show on Netflix like Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the world and the upside down world. The wounded ego is all about the upside down world. So it's all around negative. That's why oftentimes the prison, they start with I'm not something. So the process of dissolving the wounded ego is to understand who we have become that we're actually not, because it's just the world that told us who we should be, or the narrative that we've created from the trauma we experience. So I can give a few examples of prison later on during the podcast, but it's very like what I want people also to understand is like oftentimes, if not every time, any pain in the body, any pain, illnesses, sicknesses, they have an emotional root. If you have the issue in the gut, for example, you are not digesting something because the guts are for digestion. If you are issue in the neck or shoulder, you are carrying a burden since childhood. If you have pain in the hips are for stability. So there is something that constantly creates instability. Or if you have weak adrenals or kidney issue, adrenal are for draining waste out of the body. So there is something internally, there is a trauma that is draining you. So when we start to link nervous system, body, subconscious, all of that together, this is where I think we have the most profound healing, because we don't just talk only about the mind or the nervous system or the body or the attachment side. It's everything, and we take the best out of everything, we combine that. Then the byproduct of this is like the mind, which is the body and the head and the soul combined together, start to open. And then we have a discharge of energy, which conclude in someone having a different experience.
Yeah.
There's a lot in there, but I hope that people that can listen to that get something out of that.
Yeah. Well, and I think what came up for me, I mean, there's so much power in making sure that you're looking at all of those different pieces when you're diving into your healing journey. And so many people, I mean, I preach this all the time. People are probably sick of hearing me say it. You can't just go to the level of the mind. You have to start to heal at the level of the body. You have to start to look at the nervous system. You've got to look at the subconscious. You've got to look at the soul. And what you're inviting people into is to go deeper into whatever it is. And believe me, I also work with people who have only done body-based modalities, and they're in their body that they haven't had the ability to link anything cognitively, which is also really important. So you spoke about the mental prisons and the subconscious prisons. I would like to dive a little deeper into that. And I know you have some examples of what that looks like, because you're telling people, okay, we've got to start to look at this full picture of what it looks like to heal from a whole body perspective. But you're also saying there are also mental prisons and subconscious prisons that we can all probably relate to and or kind of see a part of ourselves in. So can you go a little bit deeper into those?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I'm going to give an example of a client that I've been working with at the moment. So like I've already explained a bit how the prison work and how it's created. So the process is really one of the solutions. So if I have to give you an example, one of my clients at the prison that is not very common, which is I'm trash. So like to give a bigger example of, we can have 12 to 15 universal prisons. Like, for example, I'm not safe or I'm not wanted, which I'm not wanted will create the wound of abandonment. And then everyone can have very, very specific prison based on their experience. So that's when it becomes even more interesting for me as a coach, is when I know that people have universal prison, and then I'm looking at, okay, that's not quite the language that she's using right now. So I'm going to look at what really happened in a childhood and find that language that is buried so deep in a blind spot, because that's what the ego does. It will put everything in blind spots so you cannot see them. So, for example, that woman that I'm working with, I'm trash, right? So her mother, when she was a child, wouldn't be very present with her. But when she would be present with my clients, when she was 5 or 6, it would be through a massive amount of criticism. So her mother would look at what she's not doing right and would say things like, that's trash or that's rubbish. So she developed an association with doing most things in her life as, if I'm not perfect, I'm going to be seen as trash. And this massive amount of pressure from trying to maintain the facade of the perfectionist, which is a compensation from the experience of shame, will cause her to keep attracting partner that will discard her like a piece of trash. And so once the pattern was linked for her, there was a dissolution of that constraint, and she was able to attract very different people that will this time value her. So this is just the power of language. Her constraint was, I'm trash, and I'm trash was in so many levels in her life. And so then when we discovered that, she cannot not see it, because she had built what I call a karmic momentum. Karmic momentum is like a set of behavior and habits that are trying to prove that she is trash.
Yeah.
So she will become her own mother to herself, and she will have this thought, I'm trash, I'm rubbish, I don't deserve anything. And when you link all of that, the thought started to dissolve, and then she could create a new karmic momentum out of something was wrong with me because I'm trash. But now, if nothing is wrong with me, what's become possible? What becomes available to me? Now there is space. It's like she can remember who she is at the core, which is a boundless, limitless human being, full of potentiality and possibilities. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, so beautiful. I'm curious to know, what does that, when someone does come to the realization of understanding that this is this mental prison that they're in,
Yeah.
what does the dismantling of that look like? Like, I know personally, just to know that that's your talk track is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And to dismantle and understand, wow, I didn't realize that I literally talk to myself like that all the time in everything that I do. But I'm curious, in your approach, what does that dismantling process look like for a client that understands that?
Yeah, for sure. So generally, I just before session, I will send a questionnaire. I have a few very specific questions, and then I'm going to look at all the answer. And what I look for, I'm not listening or reading what people say. I'm looking at what they are not saying. So oftentimes, I no shame to say, like, sometimes to my client, I'm like, you're lying here. And they're like, what? And because it's very direct. And I remember my teacher in NLP, she was telling me, like, one day I say, oh, you're afraid of this. And my teacher was like, oh, you cannot tell someone that they are afraid if they are not mentioning it. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to say it. Like, I can, if they pay me, I can see things they don't see. So I'm going to say in a sometimes very direct way. I know I can be very direct. And I'm like, I want you to consider that right now you're lying to yourself. Because my job is really to find where the wounded ego is manipulating my clients and when they are lying. So that's the first step. Once I see that, I'm going to link everything that I've explained at the beginning. So I see the whole pattern. So I'm going to bring some information under the form of question. I'm going to lead them to find the answer that I just found. If they cannot find them, I'm going to help them a little bit. And then generally I have them close their eyes, and I want them to tune into the body when I say, I want you to repeat that back to me. For example, I'm trash. And they're going to repeat that a few times. I'm trash. And then I want you to feel what is the experience. Because oftentimes people are like, oh, but how can I say that now? It's like, no, when you say that, you are welcoming that part of you that was not welcome as a child. So now there is a deep acceptance and reverence for that part that was never accepted before.
Mm.
And people now can have a different experience. I had people that would cry. I had people that would tremor. Some people who literally like start to bounce like this because there's a big energy that is releasing. Generally, it's like tremoring, shaking. I think I had a client that like had to go and vomit because it was literally enormous for the nervous system. But generally, where the prison, because each prison is located differently in the body. There's a prison that sits in the throat, one in the heart, one in the liver, one in the gut, a few in the gut actually. And so I will have them pay attention to where the energy is wanting to be released. I will use breath work if their ego is very strong. And if I know that opening a prison is not enough to discharge all the energy, I will do a breath work to discharge the rest. But now we know what we are working on. I love what you were saying about people that sometimes they only focus on somatic and they don't focus on the mind or on the prison. So for us that are listening, you can go for 10 years into any breathwork session. If you don't know what you are working on, you're going to discharge the energy, but then you're going to be addicted to the discharge. And then it's going to be another pattern that we need to look into, right? So I love what you were saying. It's important to combine everything as well, because that's really the deepest healing we can access.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's a way to escape. Like you said, there's a way to escape through the body.
Yeah.
Just like to escape through the mind, the ego will find its way. And so if you're not looking at both parts, you're only addressing half of the healing puzzle or a quarter of the healing puzzle, which, is ultimately not going to get you very far.
Yeah.
In the,
Absolutely.
So this has been so enlightening. Thank you so much, Quentin, for coming and sharing your heart, teaching us all about mental prisons and how we can break free and really start to look at the subconscious. I asked this question on every Aligned Love podcast, and I'm curious your answer to this question too. But what does it mean to you to be in an aligned relationship? And it can be an aligned relationship to self, to a partner, to a friend. What does that term aligned relationship mean to you?
Yeah, so there's so many answers I could give to that. The thing is, I've been in a new relationship since 2 months, and I'm really discovering what it meant to be in a healthy relationship finally, after doing so much work. So what aligned relationship, I would say, for people who are actively dating, is like, don't be first afraid to map everything from the start with someone. So understand moral values, need non-negotiable, ask the awkward question, the heavy question that people think it's heavy. Because for someone that is doing the work who is very mature, nothing will be really heavy. So that's what I did with my partner now. We looked at everything. Do you want children? Do you want to get married? What's your non-negotiable? Like, how would you react if I do this, if I do that? What is... And the most comfortable thing, like I can be a bit territorial sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So for territorial, it's a bit of jealousy. I can be that. I'm like, yeah, I can be that sometimes. Is that okay with you? Yeah, okay. So we will deal with this and that when it comes up. So aligned relationships start with an aligned love within as well. And an aligned love is found in the acceptance of the part of ourselves that we thought would never be accepted.
Yeah.
And so I want also people to understand that you don't have to accept all of you. You do have to reach a certain level of acceptance. But like sometimes, and what I'm experiencing with my partner at the moment is she accepts part of me that I'm yet to accept completely. And I'm accepting part of her that she doesn't accept fully. And that's where, when all of that is aligned, and then there's so much what people call synchronicities or little thing that, for example, in past relationship, that would be little details that wouldn't click. While with this partner, like we do things in a very similar way. When there's a bit of tension, we don't wait ages to we bring it up straight away and we deal with that and we find a solution. So next time we can have a different experience. And we know that no matter what comes, it's not personal. And I think like with this work, when we look at prisons, right? Oftentimes the wounded ego is going to make your partner the enemy.
Right.
But once you understand that a couple is always going to attract someone else with the same set of prison, but different adaptation, anxious avoidant, for example, then we realize, oh, actually, you are not so different. We don't have to create separation anymore. So it's not you against me, it's you and me against the set of prison that are trying to create us separating.
Yeah, so big.
That would be my version of aligned relationships. There is so many answers I could give, but I think that would be.
I love it. I love it so much. And I love the part that you talked about of being in relationship to your mental prisons, right?
Yeah.
That's oftentimes really hard for people to understand when they're in partnership with someone else, is that we're really in partnership with our wounds together, and navigating is really big. So I love that.
Yeah. I love that quote, like, you've never been in a relationship, which I guess that's going to be the title of the book I'm writing. You've never been in a relationship. You have been in the relationship with your deepest wound and construct. And then you are not in a relationship with your partner. You are in a relationship with the version of your partner you've created based on your past. Yeah. And so I think that aligned relationship is being in a relationship with the reality of what your partner is, and not what you think they are based on unmet needs or conditioning or past wounds.
Right. Yeah. So profound. We cannot wait. We're going to have you back on the show when the book comes out. Yeah. So that's exciting that you're having a book. So Quentin, where can people find you? Can you just take a moment to plug yourself and let people know what you have coming next? And also if they want to follow you, where they can do that. Yeah,
for sure. Thank you. So they can find me, the best is on Instagram. So Quentin, QUENTIN.G.Decamp, DECAMP. My website is quentindecamp.com. That's where they can find me best. And what's coming up for me? So I've been only working on one-on-one and two-on-one so far. And like there have been massive change. So I'm writing a couple of PDF that I want to sell, workshop, mini courses, and 2 books. So this is what I'm doing at the moment. So because I really want to have something for any type of budget that people have. It's very important to me because my one-on-one and two-on-one are quite high tickets, because I really want people to experience something that they might never experience before. But so this is where I'm at. So yeah, that's probably, I'm going to work on that for this year. And then I will see what I want to do for 2025. I love it so much. Well, Quentin, thank you so much for coming to the show and sharing your heart. Again, we're going to have you on again once the book is released. And I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. If you are listening to the Align Live podcast, please, and you loved Quentin's episode, make sure that you share this with someone that you know who could also use his guidance. Until next time, guys, I will see you on the next episode of the Align Live podcast. That wraps up today's episode of the Aligned Love podcast. One thing that would really help me and the other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment wherever you tune in and listen. Also, make sure to link up with me on Instagram @LaurenZoller, and please share this podcast with anyone who you think may enjoy it. Until next episode, remember, every transformation begins with one moment of awareness, and I hope today has been yours. I'll see you next time.